All right, today we're doing a deep dive into the law of homicide.
Right, but specifically not murder or parricide.
Exactly. We're talking about the baseline unlawful killing. And what's really surprising from the sources is how little the law sometimes cares about what you actually intended to do.
It's true. Homicide is sort of the catch-all category. It's defined as any unlawful killing that doesn't have those extra elements of, say, cruelty or a family relationship that would make it murder or parricide.
So it had its own basic legal elements.
4 of them, yes.
Okay.
But the most important detail for you to remember right off the bat comes down to the penalty.
Okay.
If the victim is under 12 years old, the punishment automatically jumps to the harshest level.
Reclusion perpetua.
Reclusion perpetua.
Yeah.
So effectively, life imprisonment. It's a huge distinction.
Let's unpack that intent paradox you mentioned. It sounds like if you, say, stab someone and that person dies, the law just immediately says, okay, you intended to kill.
That's the core principle. The penal law is focused primarily on the material result, the outcome.
So intent is just presumed.
Conclusively presumed. Once death happens, that's pretty much it. We don't need evidence you were consciously planning a murder. Your unlawful action resulted in death, and that's usually enough.
So if death always establishes intent, when does proving intent actually matter?
It only really becomes crucial when the victim survives.
In cases of attempted or frustrated homicide.
Exactly. If they live and the prosecution can't prove you intended to kill them, say, by showing you aimed for a vital organ with a deadly weapon, you're probably only liable for physical injuries.
And this is where context can just completely override the surface-level facts. I'm thinking about that farmer's case.
Oh, that's a perfect example.
You have a farm laborer carrying a bolo, a big, dangerous knife, who goes to see his estranged wife.
Right.
He gets provoked, he assaults some relatives. Looks like a clear case of attempted homicide.
On its face, it does.
But the court said no, it was just physical injury. Because his primary purpose for being there in the first place was reconciliation. That initial context was everything.
It really was. And this idea leads right into causation, where the rules get incredibly strict.
What do you mean?
Okay, get this. You wound someone, but they refuse to get necessary medical help, like a surgery. And then, because of that, they die.
Okay, so you'd think, well, they contributed to their own death.
You would think.
Yeah.
But that's not how the law sees it. That refusal is legally immaterial.
Wait, what?
The original offender is still completely liable for the death.
That is absolutely wild. So the victim's own actions don't break that chain of liability.
Almost never. It gets even more extreme. Imagine 2 people, A and B, inflict separate mortal wounds on a victim. No conspiracy between them.
Right.
They are both guilty of homicide. It's actually up to each of them to somehow prove their specific wound didn't cause the death.
Wow. And the suicide scenario you mentioned before we started is the peak of this.
It really is. An attacker inflicts a mortal wound. The victim, knowing he's going to die, then intentionally cuts his own throat.
You'd think that would change things.
But the original aggressor was still found guilty of homicide. His initial wound contributed to the event, and that was that.
So the law is just relentless on this. Now, finally, what does the prosecution actually need to prove the crime? We all hear the phrase corpus delicti.
Right, which everyone thinks means the dead body.
But it doesn't, does it?
No, not necessarily. It means the body of the crime. Proof that a crime actually happened. The court doesn't need to find a physical body if the evidence shows the victim couldn't possibly have survived.
Like being thrown into the sea.
Exactly. And one last detail. Using an unlicensed firearm isn't a separate extra charge anymore.
It just makes the homicide punishment worse.
That's it. It's now just an aggravating circumstance. The focus stays right on the result.
So at the end of the day, it seems the weight of the law lands wherever the damage is done.
That's a great way to sum it up. The moment death occurs, the legal focus shifts entirely to establishing that chain of causation.
A great summation.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to think about.
Go on.
We know that an accidental death in a lawful boxing match, if all the rules are followed, is not a crime. It's not felonious.
Right. It's a known risk of the sport.
But the moment a foul blow is thrown that violates the rules and someone dies as a result, that can become homicide through negligence. So the question for you is, how fine must that line of proper care and skill be in any lawful but high-risk activity you undertake? Think about that tiny margin for error.